I want to introduce you Eric Lundberg. Now, Eric Lundberg is the head of sales at Redshift. Now, Redshift is a South African cybersecurity company and helps customers identify risks within cyber. It's all well and good to have technology. Technology is wonderful, but if you don't operate it effectively, it's a little bit like leaving all of the windows of your house open, switching off the alarm, and putting a note on the front gate which is open and saying, "Hey, everybody, help yourselves." So, Eric, without scaring the living daylights out of everyone, which is what you guys are good at doing, let's maybe a bit of fear. Come on, it's always good for wrapping up a day. And then give us some solutions, please, in terms of cybersecurity in this brave new world into which this industry is moving.
Well, thank you, Bruce, and everyone else on the call. It's really good to be here. Whenever we get a chance to speak to whoever it is throughout South Africa, it's part of our vision is to empower people with regards to cybersecurity and the threats that we all face in our current environments. And I am going to put up a slideshow, so just bear with me quickly. Sorry, why is this not working? There we go. Okay, apologies about that. Okay, so essentially what I wanted to do is there's this, as you said, Bruce, there's this big monster of cybersecurity or security or threats that we're facing in this digital age, and nobody quite knows where to start, what to do, and how to do it. And there's a lot of things that, besides in a business, as an individual, these are the things that I help my own mother and aunt and grandmother, and that's to focus in on is certain things that are easy to manage, something that's simple to do, and it can provide a lot of insight into, where your potential threats are, or where your potential risks that you may be facing, and what that means to you. And part of that is having a good password hygiene, which I think we've heard a lot of times, but I'm going to show you a few slides that are going to show you some of the things that are still very common in today's world. The most important one, in my view, is validating information, which I'll unpack again with all of these points. Updating your devices, backups, and multi-factor authentication, with the caveat there that if you can enable it, but also for something that's important. So just to dive into it, password hygiene, I know there's a lot on the slides. I will make them available after this, so if you want to follow up, you can. But essentially, password hygiene is just making sure that you use complicated passwords, which I know everybody gets scared about, and don't use the same password everywhere, and use things like password vaults. Now, my mother and my aunt are not technologically advanced in any form. What I've done is I've helped them understand what the password manager that's built into Google Manager, which allows you to store your passwords in a very positive way, or safe way, should I say, because it's Google and you've got one account, which means your one password you need to maintain is just for that Google account. The rest of them, Google Manager can generate for you, and you can save them there, which means you don't always have to remember them. Also coming into that, where you have to change passwords on the regular, you can just ask it to generate a new password and update, and off you go. And you don't actually need to remember the password. You just need to be able to log in. The only one that you will need to know is that Google account that you log in. Make sure that it's enabled. And Google does have a lot of multi-factor authentications that you can set up, where you'd have to fingerprint on your phone or something similar to that, to just make sure that it's not just your password, but it's also something else that you've done to protect yourself. Weak passwords in 2023 are still the best way to attack victims. I kid you not, when you see the passwords that are still available today and getting used, you'll understand why I say this makes our lives as an attacker, and I'm using it as an attacker. We are the good guys that you want to show you this, not the other guys. But the passwords that are being used are still very simple and very easy to crack. And hopefully I don't scare some of you with having some of your passwords inadvertently in the slide deck, but we'll have a look. Complicated passwords, generally what I would suggest is writing down a sentence that makes sense to you, that's absolute gibberish. It doesn't have to make sense, and use that as your foundation of your password and add a few things to it. So it's something that even if you write it down and somebody happens to read it, they're not going to know what it means, because it doesn't have any sort of logic to it. It's just something.
Sorry to interrupt you, but this is really interesting, Eric. So you could say, my one dog likes biscuits for breakfast, and it could be M1DLB4B, for argument's sake. I got you.
Yeah. So it's using things that we have in common use today, and to simplify it a slight bit so that it's not this ginormous monster that everybody's terrified in. Passwords is always the one that's difficult because people are creatures of habit. They just want to be able to work. This is where we get the most joy out of it when it comes to attacking, is that we always crack passwords. Not sometimes, we always crack passwords. I just want that to be very, very clear. You never give your login credentials, banking details, or any passwords, or anything that's a one-time password, one-time PIN. None of that should be ever asked for by anybody on a telephone or anybody that you are not sitting with or discussing with. I know sometimes if you're purchasing, I think it's a vehicle, sometimes you'd have to give the financial manager your PIN while you're sitting in that office. That's the time that you would give that to that person, but it's to validate that you are in the room and it's not a fraudulent deal. Those are the times that you do. But if someone phones you and says, oh, we need you to log into this or give us your banking details, do not do that, especially with your passwords. And that is a phishing or vishing or whichever one you want to call it. That's what the guys are looking at. Don't write your passwords down or leave them around your devices. So if you have to write them down, put them somewhere safe that's not easily accessible and somebody else can't get to. I know it's not always easy to not write them down, but as I said, make up a sentence that you know which letters or even the whole string that you're going to be putting together. You come up with something that works for you, keep that somewhere safe, just as an in case and just an extra measure to reduce your risk. Not to dive into it too much, but to look at, these are the common passwords. There are 50 of them. These are all in databases right now that we use as part of our cracking rig, which is done offsite. So we don't have to worry about brute forcing and getting locked out after 3 attempts. We actually use this and go and get your user account, and we actually go and throw these against them, and it'll tell you, perfect, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is still the #1 password in 2022. And it's still probably in 2023. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't. I mean, the top 10 passwords there, the fact that they're still being spoken about in 2022, I was talking to clients and to people about this in 2015, and we're still talking about the exact same passwords. We just need to find ingenious ways of changing that perception and moving past these things and making things a little bit complicated, but utilizing something that makes sense and is easy for us to understand. The timelines, this is just to give you an indication, so don't worry too much about the stuff behind it. But if you look there, if there's 11 characters and you've just got numbers only, we can instantly crack that because of the cracking rigs that we've got. The more complexity where you add lowercase numbers, it's up to 8. But if you look at where it actually starts making sense, is once you start getting to the 14 and above, and you're using multiple factors, so you're using numbers, uppercase, lowercase, and special characters, then it takes multiple years. And when we're saying in multiple years, it takes the rig that much time to be able to try and figure it out. The chances of us figuring out is not very high. So that's why it's so important that if you've only got that one password to protect, try and make it as hard as possible. Try and get to 18 characters. Try and have it as a number, uppercase, lowercase, letters and symbols, and make it something that you understand. It doesn't have to matter to anybody else. It's what you need. And then you should have a little bit of a safer password. However, there is also validating information. And I'm using emails because it's an easy one to put onto a slide. But essentially, if someone walks into your office at the rental agency, you don't just let them walk in and go, oh, well, they'll come to us when they're ready. You'll walk to them, or when I say rental agency, estate agency, whatever your business is, or whatever you do, when someone walks into a place that you are in, you generally tend to ask a question about, hi, how are you? How may I assist you? Is there something I can help you with? You try and identify who this person is. And it's the same thing that we should apply to not just that interaction as a physical, but also into the rest of our lives. If I get something like this, which is a very low sophistication type of email, it's basically saying you've won millions. I think we've all been exposed to these. It's not very, it's really a shotgun approach. Shoot against the wall, hopefully something sticks. It's not really effective. But as you go and you start getting a little bit more complicated, this isn't potentially a scam as such as in the traditional sense of getting your data. Essentially what this type of scam is trying to do is get you to agree by signing a debit order authorization, and they just start debiting you, and it becomes virtually impossible to stop this because every time you do put a stop order, they go and change the debit order amount and then start hitting your account again. So be careful of these ones where it seems too good to be true. We all know that everybody's having a bit of a financial challenge. Don't go through this, go through normal channels that you would that you understand. Go to your bankers, go to your bank, rather focus on that than these random emails that you get in. Another one now with all the streaming services that we're all moving away from DSTV, hopefully, and you're trying to uplift ourselves a bit more. We get Netflix. These notifications are definitely a phishing email. There is no ways that Netflix will say to you that you've only got 2 days left. What they do is they tell you that if your billing doesn't get rectified, your account will stop working until you make a payment. If you look at the email account from where it comes from, it says info as the name over here. Whereas if you look here, it says support a job profile. So it's got nothing to do with Netflix. In my instance, I actually signed up for Apple Plus TV not so long ago. And the next day I received one of these mails saying your Apple TV account is blocked. So be very careful with these types of information that, when you get these, don't click on them, don't put your information. If you do, always remember the first thing that you do if you suspect it's been compromised, go straight to changing your passwords, straight to notifying your bank if any suspicious activity is identified. Stop everything immediately. You can even temporarily pause your cards if you need to. It's a good practice to have. So again, validate the information. Make sure that you're comfortable with where this is coming from. And in your guys' instances where you're getting a lot of information coming through to you with lots of attachments and lots of different details, it's very easy to let those things slip through. But there's nothing stopping you from picking up a phone where someone's saying to me, change my bank account details, but the person hasn't really phoned you and said that they're going to be sending through new details. Validate that information, pick up the phone that person, just say, I've received this request. It's saying it's urgent, but I just need to double check because I haven't had any notification of this. And then you'll be able to identify if it's a valid or a malicious intent sort of, what would you call it, attempt. This is another one that we've been getting quite a lot of, the post office. And again, I'm using my own personal, this is not for my work, this is my personal account. And it's just to show you that even me in this industry, I get hundreds of these a day. So I'm able to pick these up fairly quickly because of what we do. But for the normal person, have a look at what it says post office, but when you look here, it says no reply pay line. That's got nothing to do with the post office. If you look at the redirect by holding your mouse over here, where it says send package, on the bottom left, it'll tell you homemedicalproducts.com. That's got nothing to do with post office. So it's definitely got a nefarious intent to it. Another one that's very sophisticated, and in this instance is very, very close to what you would normally see, is, again, this is from ABSA, and you get these from all the banks, where it says view your e-statement. And as soon as you click on that, it's going to take you to this INRP at CNCR, and it's going to ask you to log in, but it's going to ask you for all the details that you don't need, because in e-statement, you only need your ID to open up in most instances. So just be careful of these ones. If you suspect something's a bit fishy, always try and check who it's from by actually looking at the actual email account. And then if you're still not sure, there's, again, nothing wrong with you picking up the phone and phoning your bank and saying, did you guys send this? This looks suspicious. I just want to make sure before I do anything I shouldn't. And again, if you log into it, just make sure you notify your bank or temporarily block your card so that nobody can make a transaction on your account. You have that power. And I'm talking in the personal sense, but this applies to business as well. And if I'm going too fast, it's just because I'm trying to keep into the time limit. So I just don't want to run over, if that's okay. But good practices as well is to update your devices. Another one that everybody misses, because I know the feeling, my mom and them don't like it because then, oh, the machine switches off and then I have to wait for it to update. And then does it work? Is it going to impact me? The thing is, if you don't update your device, there are what we call 0 days or CVEs or a vulnerability that is identified in what we call the wild, which is out there in the world. And that vulnerability is what we use to exploit, either to gain data, financial, whatever it is that we're trying to achieve with that. Now, if you don't update your device, those records are left for us to view and say, oh, you on version Windows XP. That's no longer supported by Microsoft, which means that there's all these risks that you are susceptible to that they are in your system. You can't do anything about it because you're not on the latest version. So it's vitally important to always update your devices, whether it be your phone, your laptop, whatever you can, just keep it up to date. It can be a bit inconvenient, but do it at a time when you're not busy. And just keep those the patch versions as close to current as you possibly can, because it will help, especially with your device. Your mobile device is only as safe as the latest patch that you have on your device. I check daily for updates on my device, just because I know that if I do that, I'm closing that surface area more and more and more every time. And the more I make it harder for somebody, they're going to look somewhere else to potentially attack someone that's not you. So make it more desirable than somebody else. Another one is backups. A lot of these cloud providers like Google or Microsoft, they provide you with, if you want an Office 365 license, for instance, and you want the 5 licenses, or in the Pro package, that's the Office 365 package, you actually get a terabyte of storage, which you can create a folder on and have all your data, just throw everything in there. Because if something happens to your actual device, you just log in with your account again and you've got all your data again. It's also a way to recover from a ransomware. Still today, it is one of the best ways to recover, is having those backups that are as close to up to date, because I know most businesses cannot afford to lose more than 24-hour cycles worth of data. In some instances, we've had customers that have lost up to 4 or 5 months and had to recapture a lot of it and still didn't get everything back. And it actually cost them a significant amount of money just to go and do that, to get them back to where they were. So backups are very important. Your Android and Apple accounts, as I said, have got storage space for you to do backups. Set that as an automated thing. Do it while your phone is charging at night and offline. You know, make it convenient for you. So when you get in the morning, everything's up to date and you know. As well, if something happens to your phone, it gets stolen, you break it, you basically log in, you put in your details again and you start again. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you have experienced that, where when you log in, it's now become, you don't have to do the whole swap your data from this SIM to that SIM. It's literally a couple of steps and you've got your phone back to where it was before. And that comes from having good backups. And I'm using that as an example because it's an everyday occurrence, but backup wherever you can and as often as you can, and try and automate that as best as possible. Then the last item is multi-factor authentication, which is a little bit of a tricky one because not every device and not every application can have multi-factor authentication just yet, or it's in process, but it is becoming a very important step for defense. Because for me as an attacker, if I've got your username and password for your device, but I don't have your phone, I can't log in now because I also don't have your fingerprint. But if I have now your device, I can then make a plan to bypass the multi-factor. But that means I have extra steps in my attack vectors that I have to look for and hope that I can get hold of your other device that's part of that. The other thing is making sure that, you know, if you can enable it, enable it. It does add a bit of complexity, but if you combine this with good password hygiene, your multi-factor authentication makes it, I wouldn't say virtually impossible, but it makes it a lot more difficult for us as an attacker to actually exploit that and cause you potential harm. Google and Apple have various multi-factor solutions that are no costs. You can do the authenticator apps that are on your phone, or you can just set it so that your phone gives you a little pin that gets SMS to you, or that you put your finger on it. You would have seen something similar for like your banking apps. Those are the things that you try and enable because there's data in there that is vitally important to you as a person. So think about it that way. If it's something that's just some random game or something like that, and there's no real data on there, you don't have to enable it. Have a simple password, it's fine. But when it's something like internet banking, it's got something to do with your work, it's got something to do with your critical personal information, your medical aid details, that type of stuff. Make sure that you employ really good password hygiene, backups, making sure that you, if you can enable MFA, enable it, and always validate. There's nothing wrong with picking up a phone and asking somebody, you know, is this you? Are you the one doing this? Can we move forward? If not, you know, then take the necessary steps there. And if you happen to do something, always remember, you can pause your account temporarily while you check and make sure, or you can just rechange your passwords and restart that process again and, you know, get yourself back to a point. And if you have been compromised, you can reach out to people like myself who can assist you in getting back to normal. It's not always easy and it can be a very long road, so just be careful with that. So try and implement these 5 sort of good practices and you'll be a long way down the line in terms of becoming a lot more mature in cybersecurity and your defense against those threats that you may face. And I think for there, I should be almost on time, and that's it.
Thank you, Eric Lundberg, very, very much indeed. A fabulous insight into cybersecurity, Eric, is with Redshift.